Welcome to Wobble Man. We've got him here with us today, and he has some fun stuff to talk about. Wobble Man is my dad, Jerry Willis. Wobble Man, what are we going to talk about today?
I'd like to talk about the history of the wobble blade and how it got started.
Okay.
For probably 2 years, I had a little time to think and to let my mind expand when I lived in Manhattan, going up to Craft facility in Tarrytown, New York, and sitting on the train en route and returning. I had a lot of time to just sit and think. Then when I got home, I would do studies on the internet, looking for all sources of energy. Well, of course, I've worked in really all the different phases of energy production. And I was looking for something that would lead me to a source for energy that had never been tapped. I ended up with the Gulf Stream in the Gulf of Mexico. It goes down around Florida and up the East Coast and kind of leaves when it meets the Labrador Current up around Cape Hatteras. And I thought, well, there's nothing really out there that could capture that energy. It moves 5 to 7 knots, 24 hours a day. What could be a way to capture that energy? Well, I went back to my machine design background and began coming up with a concept. Well, I thought about, well, it's got to be something fairly large. Then I thought, well, maybe for some reason I could apply the same action that a coin has when it's on its rim spinning and starts rolling. When it starts rolling, that's a wobble. That's a wobble motion. And I thought maybe that wobble motion could be turned into a machine. So I started working on that concept and ended up with a wobble blade. In concept, I made some sketches. And at that time, I was working by now, because this took a period of time, took a couple of years, sketched up a concept. I was working in Wyoming at Rollins, actually Sinclair Refinery. And I came up with a concept and built it. I built that concept out of Ace Hardware in Rollins, Wyoming.
You went to the hardware store?
Yeah, all the parts came from a hardware store.
Oh my goodness. That is cool.
I built that first prototype on the kitchen table in my apartment in Rollins.
Okay.
Then I got with Bill Seago, who was a good friend of mine down in Houston, and he arranged for a pontoon boat to test this thing with. The test would be the pontoon boat would go through the water at somewhere between 5 and 7 knots, which simulates the Gulf Stream. And this wobble blade motor, I had a handle on it so that I could lean over to the side, dip it in the water, and watch it function. Well, the results from that were promising, and showed me that this thing would work if turned into a machine to, say, harvest the energy of the Gulf Stream. Then I was back in New York talking with a fellow from Salt Lake City who at that time lived in Chicago but worked in New York, in Manhattan.
Hey, what kind of friends do you have?
Really all over the world. I've got
obviously
in India. I got friends in Africa, friends in Europe. In fact, one fellow is in Russia, another one's in Sweden. So I keep, not often, but quite often I get in touch with these people, and they'll get in touch with me. We all have interests that are common. But anyway, talking about getting back to the wobble blade, Bill Seago arranged for the test in Galveston Bay here in Houston. And as a result of his efforts, I thought, well, how neat. I could call this the Seago Drive. So that was my plan at the time, was to name this thing the Seago Drive and develop it out. But it takes investors to do anything of that magnitude. That's huge. So really didn't make any advancements for a couple of years with that unit. I moved on, and Clinton Fairbanks, as we were talking about a while ago, he's originally from Salt Lake City, lived in Chicago, but commuted to New York weekly to work. And
My
of course, while he
goodness.
was in New York, his background was Japanese language. He had been assigned by the Mormon Church to work in Japan because he's such a he knew the Japanese language so well. And Clinton
My,
ended up working for some very influential people in Japan as an interpreter. Met a lady over there. I think he married a Japanese lady. But Clinton suggested, because we have dinner once a week in a Japanese restaurant, he suggested, would this thing work with steam? I said, sure, it's just a matter of design,
yeah.
water or steam. I went on from there to expand the concept. Then I made a few presentations at the International Pittsburgh Coal Conference. The first one was on the Wobble plate. Back then, I called it the Wobble plate.
Okay, that's where I got.
The Wobble plate, I thought, gee, I need to get a patent on this before I reveal it. So I started the process of getting the patent.
Yeah.
I finally got the patent on the Wobble plate.
Okay.
Then after a few years, I decided to go for the Wobble blade. And of course, either one works.
Uh-huh.
The Wobble blade is the one I have the most interest in right now. But either one works.
Okay.
So that explains the first application. With the reason I presented at the coal conference, International Pittsburgh Coal Conference, was that the steam turbines, they get their source of steam from coal. Coal heats the water, makes steam. Steam goes to the turbine.
Right.
That's
Okay.
a simple procedure. And then it comes off at 300 degrees, 300 PSI. And then it's reduced down to water so they can pump it back into the boiler. That generally is why you see so many steam plumes around a coal-fired power plant.
Okay.
They're cooling the
Cooling
water
water.
to feed back into the boiler.
That's fascinating.
Then the industry, though, didn't seem to want to catch on to that. They, I think everybody's kind of fat and happy, making a good living. Nobody wants change. But at any rate, the Wobble blade didn't seem, the Wobble plate didn't seem to catch on. So I went to the Wobble blade concept. I got a patent on that. That was the second patent.
So let me make sure I got this right. So you originally took this idea and you were going to use it. You were suggesting it would be a great use for whenever they're cooling the water back down, that the blade would be used during that, with that cooling down steam to continue to create energy even after coal has been fired. Even the cooling down of the water would create more energy. So we have all of that energy loss in the system.
Right.
Coal fire. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, let me give you a fast five. Okay. This means I'm going to give you 5 questions. Just has very little to do with all this heavy information we're talking about. So, really, Wobble Man, what is your favorite color?
That would have to be blue.
Oh, so you're a chill kind of person.
I think so.
Okay. And then of all the places that you've been in the world, you talk about your friends all over the world, what is the one place that you would like to go back to?
Mont Saint Michel in France.
Ah, okay. What's there?
Well, it's very hard to describe. It's as if it's almost fantastical, really.
Okay.
Kathy and I had rented a Mercedes in Paris when we were driving cross country to go to Mont Saint Michel.
Okay.
And as we got, I'm going to say 15 miles away, it had been raining and there was a mist in the air. And this Mont Saint Michel is illuminated at night with very strong lights. So just above the mist on the ground in the distance, about 10 or 15 miles away, you could see Mont Saint Michel. It's actually a
Oh,
mountain.
it probably looked very mystical, huh?
It did, yeah.
The Misty
And
Mountains.
as we came on in and approached and got parked and got our bags out, and we're walking through the gates because this place has massive gates in it. It was once a fortress. They started building it in about 1200, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
been added on ever since. It's a huge cathedral on the very top of the mount.
I love
And
that.
very impressive. We stayed at Lemire Pollard. They had just closed their restaurant. It was about 10 o'clock at night. And of course, they were very friendly. They prepared a meal for us anyway, even though they were closed.
Oh, cool. Okay,
Uh,
let me ask you another question.
okay.
If you and I went to lunch, where would we go and what would you order? That would be questions 3 and 4.
Okay, I would we'd go to the Petroleum Club here in Houston, and I would have a salad.
All right. You would have a salad. Is that the cheapest thing on the menu?
No, I don't know that it is. I have no idea. I never pay attention to price when I go to the Petroleum Club.
Well, I'd probably have a salad with you.
Okay.
Yeah, I love salad.
Generally, they have a buffet at lunch.
Oh, okay. So that's why. Okay. Now here's another one. This is the 5th question. So what time do you get up in the morning?
Anywhere from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m.
Oh, my word. So I guess you go to bed super early to be able to pull that off.
Generally, I go to bed with the chickens.
Okay. When the sun goes down. So you go down with the chickens and you get up in the middle of the night.
Right.
Okay. Don't require too much sleep then, do you?
It doesn't. No, I really don't. I really don't.
Okay. Well, thank you, Wobble Man, for this session where we have been able to talk about or listen in on your ideas, where they came from. And everybody has great ideas. If they want to just build on those things, you can get the pieces at Ace Hardware. If you can just get all those creative pieces together, you can do great things.
I might need to add that you can get pieces of Ace Hardware, but you got to have a plan.
That's right.
Because the Wobble blade as it is today, it doesn't look a whole lot like that when I've cobbled together out of Ace Hardware.
Right.
So,
well, it takes time. It takes time and ingenuity and continuing to work at it. And how many years has it taken to get to this point? I've been
working this concept. It really started about 20 years ago.
Yep.
So it takes a long time to develop all this stuff, especially when you're operating on your own like I was. It's just a hobby, really. It's been a hobby, and it's becoming less of a hobby now as I'm retired now. I would like to say this though: if I end up getting, say, 1,000 subscribers and 100 people requesting STL files to produce a Wobble blade motor, I won't do it before then because there has to be enough interest.
Okay.
If there is enough interest, I get 1,000 subscribers, 100 people that express an interest in getting the STL files so they could build their own Wobble blade motor. I would be willing to do that.
Okay. That would be awesome. We'd create this ability for it to be downloaded, and there would be a price, right?
Yeah. And of course, I've already got the STL files.
Okay.
The Wobble blade motor is a 3D printed motor.
Yeah. So we're talking about if you have a 3D printer and you want to experiment with a Wobble blade being printed and working with that and put that engine in something that you would like to do or enjoy, that's what we're talking about.
And actually, you'd have to take this for an application because this is really only it's a demonstration model. It's not really meant to be utilized. It's not designed to be utilized. You would have to, what you could do if you have 3D design capability, you can actually modify the parts and install bearings. And once you get the bearings installed and the housing that you decide that you want to put around this thing, because it does take a housing. The white parts that you see in my display are are not 3D modeled, only the black parts, and the white blade is 3D modeled, but the rest of it is not 3D modeled. It's a housing that I came up on my own. But you can come up with your own housings depending on what you want to do with this thing, and it really inspires creativity, and that's what it's all about.
Well, I have this little dream of coming up with this little motor that's wobble driven. And excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. Ah. And then have one of those little, what's it, those little, what do you call them? Dancing windsock things to put on top of it. And that would be the Wobble Man with a wobble motor.
Well, maybe your dream will come true.
Yeah. And then I would love to have a big unit out back to just generate energy for my home and my future electric cars and all my future electric things.
Well, that's where this thing is headed, but we'll get into that in later discussions.
Yes, we will. Okay, good to have you here. Thanks everyone for watching, and subscribe to the Wobble Man so that we can move ahead with our projects. Thank you. Thanks for checking in.